Hi guys, today I have Rakshit with me. So we know each other for quite some time, so I thought it's a great idea to bring him on the channel and share his study experiences and other details from which you can learn. He can share his tips, how you can do well, how can you prepare well to move to Germany, and all the other details. So yeah, hi Rakshit, I welcome you on my channel.
Hi
So
Sandeep.
can you please introduce yourself very briefly, like
Mhm.
where were you before and where are you now and what are you doing?
Yeah, sure. So I have been living in, I think, in Munich for past 7 years, and as you mentioned, I remember that the day one when I moved to Munich, we actually met.
Yeah.
And before coming to Germany, I was working in an MNC company because I have done my BTech, so Bachelor of Technology in the field of IT. And post graduation, I have worked in an MNC for roughly around 2 to 3 years. And during the course of this experience, I thought, okay, I do want to do something further with the studies, and that's how I decided to go for a Master's of Science. And I decided for Germany with the reason that few of my friends were moving here as well, and they were quite excited to move to Germany, and they were also recommending me to do the same. And that's how I ended up in Germany. Before moving to Munich, I was living in another town called as Heilbronn. And in case if any one of you might have watched the movie of Robert Downey Jr., the Sherlock Holmes second part, they were mentioning about this city during the World War times. But I don't know whether it's really the reference given there or was it just the fictional story they built up around the town. But yeah, it's a beautiful town over there. How I ended up in that city for the college, I just give you an insight about that. I was looking for something in the course for masters where I can use my current engineering skills and then also build and learn some new management skills.
So can
So
you also tell about you said you came here to study masters in science. Can you also tell your
mhm.
specialization?
I did my master's of science in the area of software engineering and management. So it was a course of 1.5 years. And that's what fascinated me because within that 1 year of study semesters, so the subjects were distributed between two areas, so software engineering and paradigms, and then the second part was some IT management. So not the management from the leadership side, but rather from the IT management, like change, quality, project management, and those things. And I was luckily able to use my skills, what I learned during the masters as well, because right now I'm working in the project management area past few years now, and I can totally relate that how these things which I learned as a theory can now be used in the realistic life.
Yeah. That's so interesting to know, and it's definitely so nice that you are working in the similar field that you studied in your masters. That's really great. Okay. So, my question is, why did you come to Germany? In spite, there are other lot of options, English-speaking countries, for example, US, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. So, why did you prefer to come to Germany?
So that's a valid question. And initially, I also had the plans to go to US for my masters, but then I got the admission over there in one or two universities, but I had a chance to delay my admission to join those courses, and I thought, okay, why not I simply invest some more time for the experience in the current company where I was working earlier, and over the duration, maybe I will be able to save some money for the scholarship and for the fees, and then I go. But in the meantime, since a few of my friends were moving to Germany, they gave me this as a recommendation. Okay, just look for some study options in Germany and try to compare what could be the differences where you need to focus on while going for your master. So one biggest option for me was to see how much difference was for the fees itself. The course fees in US, it's quite high even if you get a good scholarship from the universities, but still quite high when it compares to the comparison of the fees now here in Germany. So if I recollect, I was paying roughly around 120 to 200. That was the approx range, which I paid per semester. And this was something which was a bargaining chip for me, or simply to say, okay, there is no further questions asked to go to US anymore because this I can afford myself. I don't need to be a liability for my family or to parents, and then request to give me some money for the studies as well. So that's for sure one of the reasons. And
Yeah.
secondly, for the language, I know it could be a barrier sometimes, but in the end, as I mentioned, I have been living in so many different cities already after moving from my hometown for bachelor's and for working. I was never having this fear in me that I will not be able to live properly and success in another city as well. So I did not had that hitch for me.
Okay. So can you share like how many universities did you apply when you were moving to Germany to get admission?
Mhm. So I applied in only few universities. I think it was roughly around 2 to 3 universities I applied for, and luckily I got the admissions from the university where I found the course which was suitable and meeting my expectations as well. That was the university called as Hochschule Heilbronn, or University of Applied Sciences. Maybe I give you a hint how are the universities called here, because it's an important topic. If you don't know about that, it it might be a challenge afterwards. So there are two different kinds of universities here in Germany. One is called as Hochschule, University of Applied Sciences, which is focusing more towards your career building opportunities for the companies, and it's ideally a duration of 1.5 years. And the other university, which focuses more on the research work for PhDs, is Universität. So these universities are for a duration of 2 years. There is more work done in the research area. You need to write a lot of research papers as well, or do some development areas. But my goal for selecting Hochschule was that simply that I wanted to move to Germany to quickly learn about the technology, learn more in my area of focus for masters, and then immediately after that get absorbed in the market as well for the company. So I didn't had an interest for the research work, but rather go for the practical area. That's how I selected this university, and luckily I got the admission in the Hochschule Heilbronn, and I completed my course instead of 1.5 years into 2 years, because I used one of the semester in between for my practicalship, so internship.
So regarding the university, I want to ask you, how did you apply to the universities? What kind of guidance you had available at that point of time? And how did you choose the universities? And what were the challenges you faced during the application process?
So the universities which I applied for, I was totally astonished that the admission office of these universities were really replying me back within a short duration. Because from the past experience from US, I never got any replies or responses within a fixed time duration. Or even my request was supposed to be like answered in 2 days time or 3 days of time, but I never heard anything back. So I was completely astonished when I was receiving all the feedbacks from the admission office. So that was my one source which I was using to apply. And like even for some minute questions which were asked in the admission questions forms, I was just simply going back to the admission office and asking them. Then secondly, of course, these friends who came earlier, they helped me as well to fill out some few of the forms. And the challenges here were that, okay, if you do not have a counsel or like a counselor for you, how would you get to relate all these things as well? So for instance, the grading system what we have in India, you need to convert your marks and your percentage as per the German standards, and that has to be done. So at my time, I don't know how is it now, but at my time, I had to send all my transcripts from my college, from bachelor's, to a particular dedicated government authority who was supposed to translate them, send it back to me, an original copy to India, and then also send one copy directly to the university. And of course, sometimes it happens that the one of the copies might be missed, and I had to deal with that.
Some the thing is that most of the universities nowadays not having this kind of requirement, and those who have this kind of requirement have this uni assist, which is now my assist, who provide students apply to them directly, and they do the evaluation of your masters or evaluation of your bachelors what you studied in India, and then convert it and do the complete rating and give you a package called as VPD, which gives the
Okay.
equivalency. Okay, this is where your education stands in comparison to a German university. Then they will be considered okay whether they are eligible or they are qualified or not. So
Mhm.
that's a big
Ah,
difference right now. Okay.
Thank
So
God they evolved.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And so you also mentioned that one point I really want to highlight when I speak with students, that they when they have any questions, they look on the website or they try to ask questions in the Facebook group. Definitely it's a good idea, or some other groups. Definitely it is okay to have the guidance from the right people who have the knowledge. There is no problem in that, but I would suggest one of the most authentic and real source is that you just call to the university. They have one person, they have given the contact details, or you can also write an email to them, and you always get the response from them within 1 to 2 days. And where you said it very rightly that you got the response within 2 days, because I myself, when I write to them, I got the reply even on the same day. That has happened to me many
Mhm.
times. So that's a really interesting thing about the universities in Germany. Okay. So my next question would be, can you also share your visa application experience? How did you
Mhm.
prepare for your visa application? And what kind of challenges you faced in the visa application, and was it smooth, was it difficult, and how did you overcome all those challenges?
Mhm. So for me, it was a bit of a tricky situation because I think for applying for a visa, it's a condition that you need to apply for a visa in that particular city or the region if you have been living there for roughly around 2 years. So in that case, I could only apply for the visa in the southern area of India where I was living for working. And what I did as a particular point was that I just simply took all the requirements, what they had for the visa application. Then I gave them in the exact sequence order what they have asked for during the visa interview as well. So I did not reshuffle all those pages like that, but rather I just made a booklet out of it. I put all the papers together. I did not staple anything. Rather, I used a U pin. And on the front page, so even though it is not asked for, I just simply printed out one single page from my side showing, okay, which document is on what sequence. So even the interviewer was smiling, okay, you have come prepared for your round.
Oh,
So this
that's
is just a tip from my side that you can always print one additional paper, just telling them, okay, in what sequence you have which paper. Then it easiest for them as well to simply go through your entire application. And this is quite helpful. Then your interview round is a bit more easier. Of course, it's quite tough because they ask you so many questions. So for me, the interview round itself was a bit difficult because they asked me what are my future plans, which I told them, of course. And then they were asking me, okay, what do you think? Okay, why do you need to go to Germany? Or so all these kind of questions, of course, build up some, let's say, a stress or like a mental stress. But in the end, we need to be prepared for it. So how you can prepare for that? You can just talk to some other people. If you have a counselor, you can talk to them because they have the best knowledge in this area. And if you have some friends who might have already done that, you can also talk to them. But given the fact that each embassy have a different interviewer, so it could also happen that your interviewer is from a native German countryside or from Indian countryside, so you never know. And the questions will depend person to person. But the best way is to just simply explore your area in that. You can talk to friends and everything. So that's how you can prepare for overall for your visa interviews. Challenges what I faced were that, of course, I was applying in another city. So that was the first question which came from the interviewer. You come from another city, you're working in another city, and you're applying in the third city.
Can you
So
explain that
you
in more
need to,
detail, so that people
of course. So
understand?
I come from the northern area. So I come from northern region nearby Delhi, and I was working in the southern region. But the embassy which was applied for was from the region of Bangalore. So if I'm working in another nearby area, then how come I apply in the third area? So all I think there is some clause behind there, as per the embassy rules, that if you're living in that region. So for instance, for Delhi embassy, anyone who's living near in Punjab or Haryana or Uttar Pradesh, for them, they have to apply in Delhi embassy. So similarly was the situation for me in the southern area, that I had to go and apply for the Chennai embassy. Yeah,
Okay,
that's how.
okay. Yeah, another point I would like to mention, that you mentioned that okay, there was a requirement that you must be at least living at that place for 2 years. So I don't know whether there was at that point in time what was the requirement, but now definitely this requirement is definitely is that you are living in that place for at least 6 months. So that is the
Okay,
latest thing. Okay,
change.
so yeah, so yeah, let's continue with the challenges like you were explaining
Mhm.
earlier. Yeah.
So apart from that, other challenges what I also faced was that one factor which I also considered as a challenge, but I took this more as an tip for myself, that all these documents which they ask ideally at embassy, it's a hell lot of papers. So you are just simply getting drowned with a lot of papers. So as a tip, in order to face this challenge, what I did was, if the embassy was asking me for, let's say, two sets of papers, I always had another extra pair of entire set with me, just as a backup. And it was quite helpful for me because I still remember that it was a rainy day and I had the entire set in my backpack, but somehow the water got drained inside and few papers were getting destroyed. And since I had a backup file already with me, I was able to replace those papers immediately. So this is also kind of a challenge, which I would say that you always should carry a piece of copy with you, even though it's not required, but you never know. Uh,
Perfect, perfect. So yeah,
And
go ahead, go ahead.
now I was just saying that apart from that, the challenge could also be for the blocked account. So I think probably now they might have changed the rules for that. But just to simply get a piece of paper stamp, the blocked account, you need to get another appointment as well. So that was one of the challenge also which I faced.
Yes, you are right. Let me come to all the
Mhm.
points what you mentioned, because I picked up few things from there. So definitely that's a nice tip, that you sequence the document in a in the list, according to the list which is published over there on the embassy or consulate website. That's a really nice tip, because that's the requirement. They want you to have the document in that sequence. And the second thing, they also wrote down very clearly, okay, you must not staple the document, because if you staple them, then they cannot reorganize if something is wrong. It's a little bit of work for them. Okay. And regarding what kind of questions they ask, as you said, okay, they want to see why you want to go to Germany, what is your background, is it related or not related. So for those who are new to this process, looking forward to study in Germany, they want to see that you are really serious, you have applied to a university which is related, and then you are going to really come and study here. It's not that you get an admission and then start doing something else. So the thing is that they just want to make sure that you have really good intentions behind, so that when you want
Motivation,
to,
yeah.
yeah, good intentions, and you want to study here. Okay. And yes, extra set of documents are always helpful. Something can happen,
Mhm.
so it's really good. And the last thing regarding block account, yes, it is quite easy now. Deutsche Bank was used to be only one option. I remember five
Mhm.
to six years back, and now there are multiple options. You can go to Kotak Bank, and then you can also go for the online options from Germany, for example, Fintiba or Expatrio. I never used this Expatrio, so I don't know, but yes, I have experienced all three of them: Deutsche Bank, Fintiba, and Kotak Bank. So all
Mhm.
three are good, but my first preference will be Fintiba, because it is little bit smooth, though it is little bit
Mhm.
expensive, but it is good to have rather
Okay.
compared to all the options. Yeah, that's a good thing. Okay. And yeah, it was about the visa experience, and you already explained, okay, how did you manage your visa application, so you already answered
Mhm.
that. Okay. So in how many days did you heard, or in months or days, how did you hear back on your visa application result? In how much duration
Mhm.
was it decided upon?
I think in total it took roughly around 2 weeks of time for me to get my visa information, because once I got the admission confirmation from the university, I remember that I only had like 3.5 weeks in total to plan out everything. And since I informed this as a request to the VFS office as well, they were quite helpful and supportive in this direction. And I had to plan everything in parallel because I have to move back to my hometown. And then in the meantime, that the visa was getting stamped in another city. So yeah, it worked out in the end. But overall, I remember it was 3.5 weeks, and out of which I think two weeks were taken by VFS in the embassy to give the visa.
Yeah.
Mhm,
So for the students who are now applying, because there is a lot and lot of students are coming in, not just from India, from other countries as well, and there is lot of queue nowadays, and it's very difficult to get the appointments. It's not same as like 6 to 7 years ago when Rakshit came in or I came in. Okay, so now
mhm,
if I talk about the student visa, roughly they take 3 to 4 months. It's really exceptional.
mhm,
They take a smaller period of time once you get the appointment, because getting an appointment is also challenge. So just plan accordingly. So try to apply early for the admission, and then so that you have ample time to book the appointment, or you can start looking for the appointment in parallel if you are waiting for the admission result. So just plan accordingly so that you don't have to juggle later on. Yeah.
mhm.
So you got your visa, you booked your flight tickets, and you came here. So how was your first day in Germany when you landed up here?
So the first day was quite interesting. Reason being because I landed on the 3rd of October, which is a German national holiday. So as soon as I landed in Frankfurt, I had a struggle to find a train from there to Heilbronn. Nevertheless, which I was able to somehow make it possible. And after landing up at the railway station in the city in Heilbronn, there were no public transports running because of the national holiday, and then there were very few taxis available. So I didn't knew that this was supposed to be a national holiday. Of course, this was one mistake from my side. I should make myself aware of such things. And as a first year, then while just going back to the hostel, so maybe I just tell you about the hostel as well. I was able to find a hostel while I was still back in India. It was from Caritas. I think it's a church foundation, or it's a charity from the church foundation, and they have some hostels in each and every city, but there is an age factor which they consider when they grant you a room. And the rooms are not granted for the entire semester or something. It's just rather for a few months they allow you. But it is a help for me when I'm coming from another foreign land to here. And then luckily I had the room for a few weeks, or I think at least for a month or more. And that's what I was having as a backup plan, that I will just reach here to Heilbronn, and then after settling down, keeping my luggage there, in the duration of the remaining time, what I have left with, I find another VK, which is like a shared apartment with other flatmates, or to find a hostel room in the student one and the government hostels. And on the first day, since it was a national holiday, everything was closed, nothing was open, so no grocery markets or nothing. And those first 4 days were quite interesting, because Friday, being a mid bridge day, was also kind of a relaxed day. So from Thursday, the day of landing, until Sunday, I didn't meet any other human being. So yeah, I spent my time only talking to my family for the first 4 days. And I also used most of the student food, which is like Maggie.
Okay.
So I was eating Maggie for like long, like for at least for 1 or 2 weeks per day.
Okay,
Exactly.
that's, yeah. Still, you manage, so that's important. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah. I have some follow-up questions to ask, very quick ones. So basically, you said that you took a train for Hellbrown. So in which city did you
Mhm.
land?
So I landed in Frankfurt, and from Frankfurt I took the IC, the fastest train connections what we have, and I think within 2.5 hours, something like that, I reached Helbron in the evening. And apart from that, yeah, I was also not aware of that during winters the duration of the day is shortened. So even
Okay.
though I
Yeah.
like reached there in the evening around like 4 or 5, but it was already dark. So I thought, okay, what happened suddenly? So this is also one thing which I will tell to the future candidates, that they should always maybe need to learn a bit more about these things as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. So definitely you have to research well so that you come prepared. For example,
mhm,
you gave the example that it was a holiday here, and
mhm,
you didn't have anything. Shops were closed. Everything was closed. So it's difficult to survive in those in those starting days.
mhm,
Okay, the situation is also similar right now. considering, if for those of you who don't know, because now we are into COVID situation, so once you come here in the beginning, so you have to be in quarantine for first 10 days.
Mhm.
So better plan for such things, have a place where you have all the resources available, organize things
Mhm.
accordingly, try to research in terms of where you can buy the online grocery or where you can order food online, so that you have the things at home, you don't have to go out. Because if you go out during those restrictions, and so it's not a good idea if you get caught, so be careful about those such things.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, regarding Caritas, you really gave an interesting tip here, because
Mhm.
normally I understand that why you booked this accommodation, this hostel through an NGO. I definitely understand that, because it's not only about Munich. If you look at the other cities as well, because there are these student hostels, student and work are basically are not available, at least for first semester. If you got the admission, you have the admission letter, you apply to them, and then it roughly takes 3 to 6 months at least to get the room at that place. So it's a good idea that
Yeah.
people can research, students can research other places like NGOs or some other kind of places where they can get the student accommodation or student hostels. So just try to explore your options, you will find it. Okay. So
And they can also just talk to their new classmates if they form a group either on Facebook or WhatsApp, somewhere on social media. They can, of course, talk to each other, and if works well, you get to know another person. You can build up your own shared flat.
yeah,
That
that's
is
also a
even
good
more
idea. Yeah.
lively.
Yeah. Once you are here, you have good friend circle, then yeah, you can explore the
Mhm.
option to have a flat. Yeah, definitely that's a great idea. Okay. So let's move on to the next question. So tell me about your study experience.
Mhm. So, as I mentioned, my university course was for the entire of 1.5 years. So, the first two semesters were the study semesters. And during those semesters, the courses were quite mixed. So, software engineering, then paradigms, then few of the coding languages were there, then algorithms were there. And then in the second semester, it was more focusing on the management subjects like IT management, quality management, change management, project management. But to begin with, the entire duration of experience was quite thrilling because what we have done study back in India during my bachelor's was a bit more focused on theory as well. So I don't know how things have changed now. Probably people are also starting focusing more on the practical things. But yeah, of course, so the expectations from the professors were quite different when I would compare it from my experience. And of course, then the best idea was simply to talk some local people like who were in my class, just to ask them, okay, how did they study the same subjects during their bachelor's? What are the differences now? Then also to learn about the grading system. So it's completely different for us. If we say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 out of 10 is always 100%, but this is ideally like a reverse here because we have a scale of 1 to 5 here, out of which one has been the best. So these things were interesting to know. And then even like doing these subjects were also fascinating for me because if we were able to present few topics, so few of our subjects were only succeeded by doing some presentations or research work. And initially I had an idea that I need to do some like theory test or something, but that was never the case. So yeah, these things were quite missed that like, yeah, you don't need to like always do some theoretical test, but rather you implement what you learn, and that's how you're graded by those learns when you present them. So these things were interesting.
So, in short, to conclude, so study focus is more on practicals here compared to
Mhm.
where you studied your bachelor's in India, right? So that's a big difference for students to consider if you are coming from a background, not just from India. If you're coming from a background where study is more focused on theory, and then you have to just get the good grades and you are done with that. Here, it's going to be a totally
Yeah.
opposite. It's not only about clearing the theoretical exams, it is also about you have to work on your projects, on your practicals, so that you implement what you studied and then you get the grades. So that's more focus and you can consider that. Can you also mention about the fee structure, or how much fee did you pay
Mhm.
for the study at Hell Brown?
So the fee structure was one of the deciding factor, as I mentioned earlier, for my reason for deciding this as a reason to move to Germany, because our fees was only asked to be paid for the administrative fees, so it's like a minimal amount. And if I remember, I think it was between 120 to 200 in the last phase, like in the entire semester phases. So that was the range in total per semester what we were paying. And apart from that, if you ask me regarding the cost of living, so how much amount do we use for the cost of living? That entirely depends on city to city as well. Since I was living in a more of a small town, which is kind of a student town, the living cost was a bit less if you compare it to big cities like Berlin, Munich, or Frankfurt. And then sometimes student might need to have some, let's say, internships or some side jobs in order to make their own expenses so that they can do whatever they want rather than depending on the blocked account always. And that's more or less one of the reasons for me that in Helbron, I tried my best to concise myself in this limited amount of resources what we had. So rather just using all the blocked account in one shot, I had a proper plan that okay, I will only spend this much amount on the weekly basis. Even though sometimes the amount was less, but you have to take some hard decisions if you want to balance out all your blocked accounts money.
Okay, so as you mentioned about the fee, it was around capped at 200 euros at max what you paid,
Hmm.
right? But now
Hmm.
you were studying in Baden-Württemberg, right? That's the one of the state where fee has been now legally increased by the government
Yeah.
itself. That fee has been more than 1500 euros or at least 1500 euros at every university. So students who are
Mhm.
planning to come to this region, come to study to in this region, so they must consider that factor also. If you're coming here, you must have a backup plan to how to manage your fee, because you have the same amount of block account whether you live in Baden-Württemberg or you live outside the Baden-Württemberg. I mean, you study outside the Baden-Württemberg, so you have to consider that factor before even getting the admission, because all across the Germany the fee would be completely different. It could be the same as you said earlier, 150 to 200 euros. And the second point regarding cost of living that you have mentioned, it's a very good point that the person must plan on his finances on the weekly or monthly basis so that he doesn't run short of money or doesn't burn all the money in the block account. That's right. And for that, you need to do a little bit of planning, and you must have a good resources for your means of subsistence. Can you explain or give examples, in spite of having block account, how did you manage your money from other sources of income or any kind of work, part-time
Mhm.
work you had?
So regarding the internships, what I did was rather immediately coming to Germany with the semester starting, and I thought that the first year should not be a good idea to immediately search for internships because I focused my first semester only to learn about the country itself, about the culture, to get to know a bit more in detail about the education system. And after finishing the first semester, in the second, when I commenced it, I started looking for some internships in the nearby area, but it was quite difficult because if you do not speak the local language, of course, the number of doors you can avail are less. And so during second semester, I was thoroughly looking for internships, but I got to know that there are two different kind of internships which you can opt for. So one is internship, it's like a full-time internship, and that's I think called as Praktikant in German word. And during that you work like all 5 days you work as an intern. And the second option you can choose is as a working student. But for working student, it's only 20 hours allowed per week. So I thought, okay, working as a working student might be a bit less opportunistic for me because then you are not very well connected with all the topics what you want to implement. So I thought, okay, I will still search for it if I can get a good opportunity, but somehow it didn't work. So in the second semester also, then I kept my focus on the studies as well, because I was trying to look forward to the end of the light, in the sense that okay, only 2 semesters are there and after that I need to do a thesis. But I will have some time to then rearrange my focus in that area. So first 2 semesters, I just simply studied and concentrated everything on that. After finishing the second semester, then I even get more intensively looking towards these all internships. Then I was applying for it, and luckily the universities allow you that you can take a break of a semester or even more if you want. And that's how I got an internship in the current company where I'm still working. And while doing these internships, I got to know how the company works, what are their systems, and what are their challenges, what they face. Due to this experience of internship, I immediately had a focus. Okay, I can improve something for the company, and maybe I can relate to my thesis as well, because that was the next target for me. So I proposed this as an idea to my manager over that area, that okay, you have these challenges, you do not have a resource, you need someone who can dedicatedly work on this topic. Maybe I can support you there, and I can work directly into this topic. This will be a win-win situation for the company as well, and for me, because I can relate to it as a thesis for me, and for them it's a free resource working on something which they might not be able to invest some time. So that's how these entire topics of internships might be relatable. But of course, this depends on the city to city you are living as well, because in big cities where the expenditure is quite high, I would suggest not rather to wait for your study semesters to end, but immediately start after the first semester, if you like, with the working student jobs and those things. Yeah.
That's a great point that you have highlighted, that the students must focus on practical knowledge when they are looking for internships. They must focus on to get the internship at a place where you are going to learn, and they are able to relate what they are going to do there with their master thesis or with their master study, and then come out with a practical knowledge, right? That's a great point. So you also mentioned a very great point, that it is also possible to take a semester break, and you can work as a working student for 40 hours a week, so that you, if in case you want to gain experience and you also want to manage your funding, so that is also possible. Okay, so that's a good idea if you find a right balance of using these 40 hours, using these 40 hours within a limit of 120 days. For example, you are finishing, you are close to finishing your year and you are finishing up your semester, then you can use these last days, 2 to 3 months working full time, and then you are able to manage your funds very well. And next year also, because as you are also on the semester break, then you also have ample time, 2 to 3 months, and you can use those working hours within that 120 days range, because this counter has been reset to zero in the next year.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's a really
Exactly.
great tip for
Yeah.
the students to know. Okay, you also said that you focused in your thesis to propose a process to resolve a challenge for the employer, and so that's a great idea to propose yourself what you want to do. So you shared your idea with them and they liked it, and accordingly you implemented it. So you gained maximum knowledge, and then you were driving what you were doing, and also it's a practical knowledge you are gaining. And so just one thing I want to highlight here, you just have to be look for the challenges employer is facing, and then propose what you can do for them to resolve that issue, to resolve that challenge. And accordingly, if employer or the person you are working with is okay with that, then you can go ahead. So that's a win-win situation both for the student as well as for the employer. Yeah.
One additional tip from my side, regarding the universities where you want to apply as a student. Some universities even do not allow for the students to go for a thesis outside the college. This is one of the factor also which students, while applying, before they should have a look whether the university allows them to do a thesis outside or not. It's I'm not saying that doing a thesis within a college is a negative factor. Of course, this is also good because then you implement something more towards the research work. But that's only the personal experience what I have faced, and I have also learned from that this is a bit more beneficial if you do the thesis in an organization. Yeah.
Okay.
So it depends highly on the university as well if they allow you to do that or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect, perfect. That's a really great idea, great tip you have shared. So, my next question is again going back to means of subsistence. So, for example, somebody is coming to Munich for study. and there is someone who is going to help around for study. So definitely both the cities are at a different scale. Living expenses will be quite high in Munich compared to living expenses in Hellbraun. So my main focus is concerned about how a person will manage his means of subsistence, cost of living, especially when the person is living in a big city like Munich. So what are the options for the student to manage these things?
So first of all, if you're living or if you're targeting to join a university in big cities, then definitely you need to have a student job for sure. Rather than going for a 40 hours of student program, you can easily opt for the working student contract, which is like 20 hours per week, because this way you will be able to balance out between your studies and the workload you get from the employer. So that's for sure the basic criteria. If you are moving to a big city, then maybe immediately after 2 to 3 months, you already start looking for your jobs as a
Oh,
working student. So
oh,
that will be the win-win situation, that you do not lose your focus on the studies, but rather you slowly and gradually try to balance it out in parallel to the studies. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So you mean that it is definitely manageable. You are still getting a decent
Mhm.
amount of money in those 20 hours so
Mhm.
that you can bear your weekly living expenses from those 20 hours, right? So that's a good
Mhm.
idea, definitely.
True.
Yeah. So the approach that you shared earlier, that you don't work for first semester and then start looking for the internship in the second semester, is applicable to those who are living in a small cities, so that they are not burning up so much money and they can manage it later on. So that's one thing to note down. One thing you were telling me before, that there is also something that internship is mandatory or not. Can you also share
Mhm.
details about that?
Sure. What I recall from my time of studies is that some universities have this as a criteria to do a mandatory training, so mandatory internships, but some universities have it as an optional criteria as well. So I think now the laws have been changed in this direction, because universities having mandatory internships, for those the companies are actually also required to hire some particular amount of people or students who have the mandatory training. So in that case, of course, there is a disadvantage for the person who is only having the internship as an optional criteria. So this is also one of the factor which we need to look into.
Okay.
And based on that, if you have a mandatory training, then this could influence your cost of living as well, because if it's a mandatory training as per your contract with the university and your contract with the employer, then the public transport offers you cheaper travel tickets, then a few more additional benefits are out of that, but only particularly for the mandatory training.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, so now you are at a university, you got into a good internship and you have got a good experience, and then you are also studying at the universities. You are also studying at the university. So, what kind of things a student must consider while studying to get hired as soon as possible, or even just before finishing the master study, if that's possible, or as soon as it is finished, student must have something in his or her hand so that the person gets employed immediately, have some source of income and start settling down, because that's the only motive. International students are coming in from a different country, spending a lot of money. So can you share the tips to get hired as soon as possible when you are studying
Mhm.
in the full-time job?
So first thing would be the basic rule to learn the local language for sure. So many universities offer these courses in the evening classes. So even we had to do that. So 9 to 5 was the normal classes duration for the courses, and then immediately after that, like 6 to 8, were running these courses, language courses. So I would recommend each and every student to always go for these classes, because then during your course of your studies, you can already trying to learn the language, and this will be a plus point for you. So apart from the local language, I would say the second factor in order to get a job in the market would be regarding the resume, what you prepare, because now onwards there are like so much automation done as well. And based on these automations, sometimes the resume does not end up at the HR table. So just prepare the resume very well. If you have a counselor, that's for sure sure shot that you will have the proper guidance given for that. And in case if you do not have a counselor, of course, talk to your friends who are your classmates and even talk to your professors. And this will help you a lot.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so another question I have: what are the things to know for a student when he is coming abroad to study in Germany? What things student must know so that his journey is going to be easy?
Mhm. So the first thing I would say, not to relate your journey to any movie, either to Bollywood to any other movie at all, because what they show in the movies is entirely a complete scenario. So they always show some shiny areas, so it's not a practical thing to do, and that's why a person who's moving abroad for study should always be, let's say, ready for any challenge that might happen. So there is no one else who can simply support you immediately. So you do have friends, but not as a family member there to guide you through. So become more independent, take your own responsibility as well, and then also be prepared for the consequences of your actions for sure.
Okay. So in all, the thing is that because you are on your own, so it's better to research the things before doing anything, so that you can see what could be the outcome of any action you are taking, whether it is about managing your funds, or managing about your study, how you are managing your courses and studying here, and finally how you are living at your apartment or at your room, so that if you are managing yourself well, you have a good environment, and then you will be able to study well, and you will be able to do what you came here to do, right? So yeah. And one last question I have: what kind of mistakes a person should avoid, a student should avoid, after coming to Germany?
Okay, for the mistakes, one point which I would like to highlight, especially during your studies, is regarding the plagiarism. So, plagiarism is something where you showcase that you have brought up this as a topic, but rather it's owned by somebody else. So, many universities, I think probably not only in Germany but outside as well, they have these softwares now available, customized by the universities, where they simply check all your research papers, the documentations, what you submit, and they run it through the plagiarism tools. And that's one thing which I would like to request everyone, because I know that by human nature people tend to refer other people's information, which is also part of the research work, but always try to give that reference in your research work. If you miss that, there are high chances that you might fail that assignment. So that's for sure. And relating to the market towards your expectation to join the company, if you have any target companies in your mind which you would like to join, then simply focus on the skills. What does these companies ask for? So keep an eye on their web pages or websites of these companies. Keep an eye on their different positions, what they offer, so that you can work on your skills and move more relatable towards their goals and requirements.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So I just want to mention 2 points here, what you said. So basically, regarding plagiarism that you have mentioned, so it is regarding the thesis work that you are submitting. You have to make sure you are putting in all the references correctly in your research work, in the paper, what you have written down. So you have to clearly mention anything what you have referred, if you have picked up any information from some other resources. So you really have to be careful about that. Okay. And the second point you have rightly said, I call it sharpen your X, because even I have my own course, online course, where I'm teaching people how to write a professional CV, how to project yourself according to the job opening, according to the job description, so that you prepare well for the any position you are applying to. So you must sharpen your X, you must prepare on your skills, you must work on your skills while during the study, research the job market, and accordingly try to gain such kind of experiences, so that employers feel that okay, you are connected to that employer, you have that kind of connection, and they are interested to invite you for those interview calls. So if you get those interview calls, then you have a high possibility to get that job. right? So just focus on these things. Thank you, Rakshit. You have shared a lot of knowledge and lot of experience with the students here. I'm sure if they look it very carefully, if they have understood everything very carefully, these are the good pointers for them to research their journey, to prepare, to apply to the universities, and even after coming here they can focus on their studies accordingly. If they focus on these areas, definitely they are going to shine at the end.
So I wish my good luck to all the candidates who would love to study in Germany. And I know for sure if you follow all these tips, what we have just presented in this video, this will be quite helpful for you to prepare yourself in order to survive here and then also succeed in finding a good job for sure. Good luck,
Definitely.
guys.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So finally, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming on the channel and sharing your
Welcome.
information. And hopefully to see you again for your another experience regarding your job search journey, and regarding how did you find the job and how you are finding to work here. How is the work culture? We will definitely discuss in another video as well. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming
Sure.
on the channel. Yeah,
Happy to share.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.